just got out of theaters from seeing The Long Walk on the big screen, and I have some things that I want to talk about for this movie, guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the movie review. Let's go. The Long Walk is a horror sci-fi film directed by Francis Lawrence and is based on a Stephen King novel that takes place in a dystopian society where the US economy is at an all-time low, and essentially teens participate in a grueling high-stakes contest where they must continuously walk or be shot by a member of their military escort. So in a way, this movie reminded me a lot of like The Hunger Games, for example, because the way this idea is presented to the audience inside of this movie is they pick one person from each of the 50 states, so 50 participants in this contest, and from my understanding, the participants have to actually sign up for this contest, so that's where it differentiates from the Hunger Games series. But nonetheless, they must compete in this walking competition against each other, where whoever is the last man standing on this walk will be the victor and will be rewarded with riches beyond their comprehension and one wish that will be fulfilled to them by the US government. Now, with a concept like this, and after seeing the initial trailer for this film that released, which by the way, we did do a trailer reaction for that on the channel, found the concept extremely interesting. I knew that this would be a film that I wanted to see in theaters, so I went ahead and did that, and now it's time to talk about how this movie turned out. So let's go ahead and start with my positives for The Long Walk movie. And for my first positive with this film, I want to discuss the characters, because this is what really, makes this movie come to life, makes this movie shine, and is really what stands out as you watch along this film. Now, there is tons of different personalities throughout these 50 participants that the audience gets to connect with, but there are two in particular that really stand out, in which we can say these are the main characters of the film. And those two characters would be David Johnson as the character Peter McGreeves and Cooper Hoffman as Ray Garrity. Now, throughout the film, you get insight into a lot of these characters' personalities, their distinctions amongst each other, but also how closely related they are, as just being countrymen and as just being men that are a part of this competition taking place, and how they all just want to better their lives. They all have something they're doing it for and a reason that they want to complete this goal, with even some twists and turns throughout the film, which were definitely interesting. But what really stood out to me, and this is going to move into my next positive for this film, is the brotherhood amongst these characters, because as you're watching throughout these films, of course, they're going through this traumatic event together, and as we know, people tend to bond through trauma. So because of that, even though one person could only make it through this competition, only one person could live, 49 other people are going to die throughout the duration of this film. That is just the fact of the matter. So for these people to know that the person standing next to them being alive can potentially result in them being the ones to die, yet them still being able to form these friendships, to express this camaraderie and this brotherhood that is showcased throughout this film. I just love the way the movie dived into this and really touched on the human element inside each and every one of these characters, even though certain characters, may seem unhinged, may seem to be presenting themselves in a certain way. Through the duration of this film, considering the events that they are going through, this walk where they're going to be walking hundreds of miles for days nonstop until one victor is remaining, it really brought out and revealed the true human nature between these participants in this contest, and how none of them really wanted the other to die, even though that's the end goal for all of these guys, right? The end goal is, I'm going to be the last one, the rest of you are going to perish throughout this challenge. They still throughout this film managed to root for each other, to pull each other together, to try and help each other, get back up. Throughout the trailer, you got to see, for instance, someone tying their shoes, for example, not being able to tie their shoes fast enough. You get one too many warnings, and then, you get your ticket. You're pretty much done for. And even though an event like that would directly benefit the other participants, they're still cheering and egging on for that one person left behind to get back into the race, because at the end of the day, they don't want to see their fellow participants and their fellow countrymen die. Even though that's the point of the contest in the first place, I found that interesting. This contradiction that exists there, and like I said, this human element that this movie touches on, I think that was done very well. Now, another positive that I wanted to highlight for this film would be the horror elements to this movie, because I think they did a very good job with these elements. It doesn't push it too far to the point where this movie is unwatchable for some people. I think a lot of people are going to be able to see this film and be able to deal with the violence that it presents to the audience. However, I love how they expressed all the questions that you would have going into a movie like this. What happens if your shoe shoe unties? What happens if you have to use the bathroom? What happens if, you know, you pull a muscle, your leg gets messed up, you get injured along this walk? All of these different questions that you would have, they put it on display here inside of this movie, and they do it in a horrific way a majority of the time, which I definitely enjoyed. But also, you know, another thing to highlight here would be the comedic element that is on display inside of this film, because to be honest, sad to say, but some of the deaths in this movie are hilarious, did make me laugh out loud as I was watching this film at how ridiculous of a concept this happens to be and some of the situations that these characters find themselves in. But yeah, this movie has a surprising underlying comedic element there. It's not as out there as its horror elements. That's obviously the main focus for this film, but still, I found that part of this movie enjoyable. Now, with that being said, that's pretty much a majority of the positives that I had with this movie, so let's go ahead and move into my negatives for The Long Walk film. And for my one and only negative with this movie, it would have to be the downtime, because of course with a concept like this, considering we're just watching people go on this long walk as the movie title presents to you, it is of course going to have some downtime across this hour and 48-minute journey within this movie. And so you do get to these moments where it's like, okay, they could have cut this out of the film. Can we rush this part a little more? How long is this long walk actually going to take? But outside of that, there isn't really too many issues with this movie. I think for the most part they do a good job with it. So let's go ahead and move into my overall review for The Long Walk movie. Guys, I think this is a Stephen King novel done justice. Now, to be honest with you, I haven't personally read this novel, so for the people that have, I am curious about what you thought about this film. Let us all know how accurate it was to the depiction of the novel being translated into film. How well was that done? Let us know down in the comment section down below. But as far as just going in to see this movie without any previous knowledge other than seeing the trailers, I think this is a Stephen King based movie done well. Of course, we've seen dozens of movies based on Stephen King novels, some terrible and ridiculous, some great, and some of my favorite movies of all time, such as like the It Chapter 1, Chapter 2, that is amazing. And for The Long Walk here, I think we are leaning more towards the good side. I was entertained for the most part throughout this movie, outside of the obvious downtime that is going to be present in an idea like this. I enjoyed the dystopian parts of the society and how they were discussed here, you know, the conversations between the characters, the brotherhood element here, the connection between just two humans who don't want to see each other die, but that is of course going to be the end result of this film. And for the ending of this movie, I understand why they did what they did. However, I still think I would have liked to see something else there, a bit more on the bright side. But at the end of the day, it is a dystopian horror movie, so of course there's going to be a sad result at the end inside of this film. So with that being said, guys, let me go ahead and drop my official rating for this film. If I had to rate The Long Walk, I would give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. It gets the 7.5 out of 10. This is a very positive score on my channel, about the B- territory, I would say, if I had to, you know, give it a grading scale. But for the most part, if you're interested in this movie, if you liked what you see in the trailers, I would recommend you go out and support this movie at the theaters, especially if you can make a matinee showing and see it for that lesser price, because that is exactly what I did when I went out to see this movie. And yeah, I thought it was an interesting watch. Again, I'm curious to know how the novel readers feel about this movie. Are they liking it? Are they disliking it? Let us know that down in the comment section down below. And if you don't know what we do here on Demigod, we do film, TV, and anime-based content. So if you're interested in this type of content, in the right place, hit subscribe. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.